everyone. Welcome to another episode of Changing Game Developers' Life. Today, we have Atiya Nova. Maybe a bit of a background. So I know Atiya for quite a while. I got to know her as a student at Ontario Tech University, and we stayed in touch and connected since she graduated. So I'm happy to have Atiya on this podcast.
Hi, I'm Jen Whitson. I'm a sociologist at University of Waterloo, and I am also super happy to have Atiya with us. Atiya, I want to start right away. You have a degree in game design and development and entrepreneurship, but you also have a graduate degree in CS.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how you chose the program that you went to and how it might have helped or hindered you when you were looking for jobs?
Yeah, absolutely. I knew I wanted to be a game developer from a very young age. I was playing a Final Fantasy game. Specifically, it was called Final Fantasy The Four Heroes of Light. And there was an Easter egg in the game where you could talk to the developers, so to speak. They left some messages, some hidden messages in the game for players. And one of the developers said to the player, "Oh, you should make a game with us," or something along those lines. And when I was a kid, that inspired me so much. I decided, yeah, you know what? That sounds like a great idea. I'll become a game developer. So I heard about Ontario Tech University's game development program from some friends, and I decided to give it a try and fully immerse myself in the world of game development. And it was difficult for sure. The program was a very challenging one, but it allowed me to learn a lot about many different facets of game development: programming, art, games user research. I was learning all of it. And during that time, I was friends with some master's students, and I learned about the stuff they were doing, the research, and I thought it seemed interesting, and I thought maybe it would be good for my education and for my career if I pursued a master's. So that's what I did. I got a master's in computer science. I did this while I was working, so doing like internships, doing contract work, stuff like that, and TAing classes. So I helped teach game design, programming, and math courses. So yeah, very difficult, but I think it was all worth it in the end. I think everything I did helped me in my career. Not everyone has people, they go to school or they do these types of programs and they don't get as much of a benefit out of it. But I think for me, I was able to make the most of it. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with what I did in university.
Was there something that went into your choice to do a graduate degree in CS first before heading full-time into the industry?
Yeah, so I felt like I needed a bit more schooling. I felt like I needed a little bit more time to work on my portfolio and to polish my skills. And it's difficult doing that while also doing a graduate degree, but I felt like it'd be a good way for me to buy some time before fully entering the industry while still learning some new things and some skills that I was able to apply to my job.
And so what happened next? And I guess the preface here is maybe can you tell us what you do at Ubisoft? What does a games user research do?
Yeah, for sure. My role specifically is that of a user research analyst. So I help run user studies, playtests, I analyze player data, and ultimately our job is to help the game designers figure out how to provide a better player experience and to help them figure out how to improve facets of their design. So as part of my role, I'm wearing a lot of different hats. Sometimes I'm running very unique or interesting studies. And I actually got my start at Ubisoft as a student because I got an internship. So I was interning at UB while I was a student, and as soon as my internship was done, I was turned into a full-time employee. And that's how I got my official start at the company.
I have a question for you. So something, as I mentioned earlier for our listener, I know you for quite a long time. And something that I always were impressed is not only you do like really good job when you were a student or now at your full-time job, but you also have interest usually like building games out of your key obligation. And I know you recently released the game. I want to hear more about that and maybe your motivation behind building those, either that particular game, and I know you've done other games as well. So what's the key motivation behind them? And if you want to talk about your game as well, I'm very curious to hear the story behind that as well.
Yeah, for sure. So I really love game development as an art form, and I love all aspects of game development and just seeing how everything comes together to create one cohesive whole. And recently I realized I like using games as an art form to explore more serious topics. So last year I released a game on Steam called You're Not Family. It's like a weird little narrative rhythm game about some toxic family dynamics. And, working through it in many ways was therapeutic for me. But sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to, I guess, phrase this. For me, it was therapeutic, and it was also an interesting artistic challenge because I was trying to blend a couple different genres together in a way I hadn't seen before. And yeah, I really enjoy doing things like that. I love trying to make games on my own, and I'm currently working on a horror game that I hope I can put out on Steam soon. And like You're Not Family, it's going to be something completely unique and also personal. And I hope it's something that resonates with people. Something else I realized through my game dev journey is I really like connecting with other people. And with my project that I released last year, it emotionally resonated with some people. And just that human connection, I think, is really powerful. And it's so easy to do that with interactive art. Yeah, and I want to do more of that in the future.
Yeah, no, this is super interesting. And we make sure to include the link to your game as part of the podcast notes so our listener can check it out. Yeah, for sure.
And I guess the additional point is, what was the reception to the launch of your game and what followed in terms of how did people respond? How did your company respond, given that you were working for them during the day and making another game by night? How did that change things once you released your game?
Yeah, so the response to my game was really positive. People seem to really like it. I got a lot of messages from people who played it, friends and strangers alike, who they connected with it in some way or they enjoyed it, they thought it was creative. And that was very heartening to see because whenever you do anything creative and put it out there, it's a very vulnerable experience. So I'm happy that people liked it. And yeah, the company seemed to be pretty cool with it. My coworkers and my managers knew about the game and they were super supportive, especially since these two facets of my life are very separate. Like when I'm at Ubisoft, I'm 100% at Ubisoft, focusing on their games. And outside of work, that's when I pursue these creative projects, and it's a creative outlet for me. And I know for a lot of game devs, or I've heard of a lot of game devs who do creative stuff outside of work just because it can be a way to help prevent burnout and to just make sure that they're refreshed and they don't get tired of what they're doing. And I think it helped me in that regard as well. But yeah, in terms of how things have changed after, I think on a personal level, I gained a lot of confidence in my abilities as a game developer. And I guess on a more professional level, I got to share my work with a lot of people. And last year, because of the release of my game, I felt emboldened to apply for the Game Awards Future Class, which every year the Game Awards, they pick 50 people to represent the future of the games industry. And I was selected as one of those 50 people. And I was really happy. And I think my game had a big part in it because shows how resilient I am to be able to release a game while still working full time. And also shows who I am as a person and who I am artistically, creatively. I guess what I'm trying to say with all of this is that it's had a very positive impact.
That's really cool. And congratulations again on the Game Awards. I was actually going to ask you about that, but you nicely covered that.
I want to know sorry, Pejman. I need to interrupt because I want to know what your dark magic is that you can manage your time so effectively that you can work full time on games during the day and still have the energy to develop and launch an independent game at night. And it sounds like this is a pattern that you had throughout your sort of education, right? In your undergrad and grad education, that you were doing full-time schoolwork while interning and while working on other projects on the side. Like, what's your magic? Please tell us.
That's a great question. I don't fully know myself how I'm managing, to be perfectly honest. Sometimes I definitely do a little too much and I'm like, okay, Atiya, you need to take a step back. But I think for me, at some point, I just learned to work really hard. And I think it's due to some of the experiences I've been through growing up, and it's due to being a woman in game dev. There's very few of us, and sometimes our industry can be not the nicest to people who don't necessarily fit the mold, so to speak. So I think for me, working really hard it was like a coping mechanism, like a shield, like a way of showing that I'm worthy and that I deserve to be here, along with venting out my frustrations. And I'm definitely the type of person to use art as therapy. So yeah, I do think that because I'm a minority in this industry, I think that did harder than it pushed me to work really hard. I think if anything, a lot of my work ethic to I may also have undiagnosed ADHD or something, and maybe that's why I'm doing so much all the time. It could be that. But yeah.
I'm also curious about the experience of being a minority, right? In computer science, we know that there are typically less than 25% women. Game development, we see trends continuing in that direction. And so where do you find your community of supporters when in your general sort of situation you feel alone or isolated, right? Like, where's your community of people that lift you up, and how do you find them where you feel that you fit in when in the larger milieu you feel like you stick out?
Yeah, that's definitely something I learned to manage over time. I've learned to really prioritize connecting with female colleagues, school and at work. We talk to each other when we're feeling down and we try uplifting each other whenever we succeed at something. So I have, I would say, really close relationships with the female game developers that are in my vicinity or in the communities that I'm in. But also, I think I'm fortunate because at work I have a very supportive team, and there are a lot of like minded individuals and very kind individuals. So I was able to find community in them. And I'm really lucky because not everyone gets to be part of a very supportive team, right, when they enter the industry. But I've had managers who really look out for everyone's mental being, and they're very mindful of the challenges that I go through. And I benefited from that a lot. And I think it taught me just how important it is to make sure that we try fostering healthy work environments in the industry. Because I like to think that change starts with us and it starts in our immediate circles. And that means trying to do the best we can to support each other. It's interesting. I think my experiences in the industry so far has been pretty positive compared to some of my experiences right before entering the industry. And I'm very fortunate.
Thank you for sharing those challenges. And it fits obviously very well with the topic of the podcast. And that's my next question. So we are trying to talk about how we can change the game industry for the better. So I'm curious if you could maybe tell us a little bit more in terms of what do you think that we could do collectively, not individually or not one company, but as members of the game industry, what could we do to improve things?
Yeah, it's definitely challenging, especially these days with layoffs, with so many other things. Game developers are going through a rough patch at the moment. I think one thing that I've taken, sorry, I'm just thinking about, I guess, how to word this.
Huge question.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
such a difficult question. Yeah.
Please solve everything.
Yeah, I wish there was an easy solution or something. You know, with the state of the industry, people are exploring measures such as unionization, workers' rights, things of that nature, and that's very important. We do need our protections. And then I guess some more like when it comes to the communities that we're part of, I think what I said before of trying to foster healthy communities, that's something I've really been trying to do. That means not standing up for bad or standing up against bad or toxic behavior, supporting each other through difficult times, uplifting each other, being a role model. These are all things that I've been thinking about and trying to do myself. One of my coworkers, they've described me as being very kind, very helpful, and I take pride in that because that's the kind of person I want to be. And I think that if we all tried our best to just be kind to each other, be open minded, and help each other, that goes a long way. And sometimes when it feels like things are out of our control, that there's so many forces out of our control, that's looking out for each other is all we really can do. Yeah, that's just my perspective. Yeah, I really do wish there's an easy answer, but I think these types of things, they take time and a lot of effort.
I find it, I don't want to say sad, but I find it rough that our best solutions have to do with individual developers, right? In terms of being kind to each other, supporting each other, having collective solidarity and banding together to force change. And so much of the work is downloaded on workers' shoulders to make things better and to improve things, particularly women, people of color who are hired and then expected to represent for their gender or for their group and serve to make things better for everybody. And I'm curious about like how you manage that weight or manage that privilege or responsibility of opening the door for other people and making things better, and how you manage the fact that it's you being asked to do it and not C-suite execs being asked to do it.
Yeah, therapy helps. Helps a lot. There are techniques that I've learned over the years that help a lot. Like sometimes I have to disconnect from everything and let myself try and find inner peace. And I think I mentioned before that I have some strong relationships in the games industry, and that helps as well, like having friends, people that you can talk to about your concerns, whether in your own company or just the industry at large. It's so cathartic being able to complain about things to someone. It is sad that we have to fight so hard, and yeah, for me, my solution was just finding these ways of coping over the years. And hopefully, we won't always have to fight so hard. I'm not fully sure how that can be the case yet. Maybe that's depressing, but I think the state of everything is a little bit depressing right now. And sometimes you can find solace in acknowledging how rough things are. But yeah, I think I try to be hopeful. And my colleagues as well, we all try to be hopeful. Even though at times we may be carrying a big burden, all we can really do is try our best.
I have another difficult question. I was actually thinking, let's go back maybe 10 years ago where you were in high school or about to start the university. What did you wish to know at the time about this industry that you want to share? As I said, I think group of our audience are those who are currently at the school studying game development and interested in doing what you are doing these days. So what do you wish at the time and what would you like to share?
I think what I wish I knew at the time was so A couple things. The first is a part of me was wondering, oh, is it actually that difficult to be a game developer, to break into the industry? And the answer is yes, it is very difficult. And I think knowing that ahead of time is very helpful because then you can prepare yourself mentally or in terms of like your portfolio. It's good to be aware of the challenges that lie ahead. The other thing that I wish I knew is that sometimes the best way to learn game dev is by making games, whether it's making small projects, recreating games that you like. Just the act of trying to make games can teach you a lot. And that's something that I wish I had started doing even earlier. There were some things that I'm glad I did. I'm glad I worked so hard at school and that I studied so much because a lot of what I ended up doing in school, I do end up doing on the job. So for me, it really did help prepare me. And I think for students who are starting like game dev programs or any program, really try to make the most of it. Try to learn as much as you can. Try to make the most of the connections that you have. It's a really competitive industry. So anything that you can do to prepare yourself is worth doing, in my opinion.
I'm curious as to when you started work and got into the industry, was there something where you said, oh my goodness, my school did not prepare me for this? This was not at all how I expected. This is way different than how I thought things would be. Did you have any of those moments?
When it comes to user research, I was prepared very well. Thank you, Benjamin. But I did see, what it was like for the programmers, the artists, and from talking to some of my peers from my year, I could see some of the ways in which school didn't prepare them because especially for these very specialized skill sets, it's difficult learning these things and being like up to date on what processes are like in game companies. And I think a lot of the professors we had tried their best, but there's just so much to teach and it's difficult just having a program that properly prepares game dev students of different disciplines. That's a very difficult thing to do. So I think for me, I was fortunate. I was prepared. I felt like I could tackle things in my job and it was what I expected. But I know for some of my peers in adjacent fields, they weren't as lucky. I think there's another thing where I'm trying to figure out how to word it. I think having a good work ethic and a good mindset goes a long way because even if you don't know how to use a specific piece of software or how to do something very specific, as long as you're willing to learn, as long as you're able to listen to feedback and really apply yourself, then you'll be able to figure it out and you'll be able to go far. And that's a skill in and of itself. And I think for me, as I was working hard on school projects and trying to push myself outside of my comfort zone, that's a skill that I ended up picking up. And I think it's a really useful skill to have, but I also think that not all students are able to grasp it per se. We all have such different journeys when it comes to game dev. And honestly, even some of the stuff I said is like useful advice. It may not apply to everybody, but it's what worked for me. And I think it's what could have helped out some of my peers as I was going through the program. So yeah, I hope that answered your question. Sorry, I rambled a bit.
It's good. I'm also curious. I think you probably had a good picture of what your work might look like because you scored an internship with a local company. And I'm curious as to whether you have any tips for people looking to get their foot in the door with an internship and how to stand out. Because I know a lot of people who try to get internships and really don't succeed. And I know some of it is luck, like living in a city that has a game ecosystem and people hiring for internships. But I'm sure there's also a whole bunch of other secret sauce or tips that you might have about internships.
Yeah. So I think one thing that's really helpful is to find like maybe alumni from your school or something along those lines, but people who have gotten internships or jobs in the field that you're interested in. And try to talk to them. And hopefully, if they're not too busy and if it's not a bother, they can show you their resume or their cover letter. I've shown people like the cover letter I wrote, I've shown them my resume. And I think it's really helpful seeing how people market their skills and polishing your portfolio as much as possible. That's also really important. Having projects outside of just stuff that you've done at school is really important because it shows dedication and also it sets you apart from your other schoolmates. And I think I know for me, I was doing a lot of research into how to write a cover letter, how to format my resume, things like that. And I guess that's applicable for any type of internship application, but it's important. Like for my cover letter, I learned how to really talk about basically the experiences that I went through as a student, as a research assistant, and how that gave me the necessary skills to excel or to be able to excel at the job that I was applying for. Yeah, it's a little hard because I have so much advice and I'm used to giving out so much advice. But I think the first step is try to talk to people if you can, get advice from people. There are a lot of people out there willing to help and willing to show their stuff. And also sometimes you can just go on a person's website and see their resume, and that could also be worth doing just to see where they're at and maybe get an idea of where you need to be at. And I think that's the gist of the advice that I have. I hope that's helpful, but if someone always has specific questions, they can ask me. I'm always happy to help.
That was great. And I know we are coming up to the time. I just wanted to say that from a perspective of someone who worked with you for quite a few years, I think you have such a nice combination of technical skill, professional behavior skill, and also super nice and super kind person. And I think that reflects in also what you mentioned as one of your ways or one of the things that help you to be very successful in such a challenging industry. So just wanted to say it's for us faculty member, like getting and having students like you is such a nice thing. And I'm actually really happy to see how well you are doing.
Oh, thank you. I feel emotional. I won't cry or anything, but thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me on here. I love sharing my experiences, especially if there's a chance I'll help somebody out. I'm always willing to talk and lend my help however I can.
Awesome. Any final question, any final thing you want to share with the listener? Anything that you wanted to talk about and we didn't bring it up? We still have a few minutes if there is anything you want to highlight. Or Jen, any final question you would think we should cover?
I'm wondering if there was anybody you saw as a mentor or somebody specifically who like really helped you a lot that you'd want to shout out to.
Yeah.
Or to pass on the best piece of advice that they gave you.
Yeah, I definitely have some shout outs. Obviously, Pejman, other profs from our program, Samantha, she also went to our program and I worked alongside her and she has been so supportive. I think I've had some great mentors and managers. There's a lot of names of people that I'm truly grateful for, and I'm lucky that I've got to meet so many great people. In terms of managers, there's Ahmed, who's not my manager anymore, but he was great. And currently Cameron and Elise, they are amazing. I had a programming mentor named Mordred. He's such a cool guy and super duper helpful. Taught me a lot about code that I did not know before. Yeah, I may even be forgetting people. Later on, I'm going to be like, oh my gosh, I should have mentioned so-and-so. But yeah, those are the names that come to mind.
We have a list of people we would like to talk to for this podcast, and people you mentioned are definitely on our list, and we're going to bring them on the podcast as well.
That's great. Other than that, I've been playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. It's really good. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, thank you for joining us today, Atiya. So much to our listener for staying with us for another episode. We are looking forward to more discussion on this topic.
Yeah, thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
You can check out our website at www.changinggamedevlife.com for summary notes, a full transcript, and related resources that are mentioned in this episode. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to our Substack page or follow us on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. We're very passionate about having these conversations with people who make the game industry better. Together, we can drive positive changes. If this episode resonated with you, make sure to share the podcast with your network and take a moment to rate us on whatever platform you use. Thank you.